people were saying. That was very hard for me. I couldn't do both. What we're saying.
So we are live streaming and we're not recording yet, but a few more people to bring in. So we only have 3 council members. Hoping we'll get some more.
Missing Sean.
We're missing Gary.
Yes.
Sean, Gary, and Marcus.
Mayor, could you give Gary a quick call? I see
Marcus is coming in now.
Janine Peter Shagan, and I don't know if he's possibly on another computer. Could you, please? There's Marcus.
Logging on.
Hi, Marcus. Marcus, can you hear us? Oh, there's Sean. I'm going to mute Marcus.
Good idea.
Okay, we got Sean. Yeah, we'll just wait.
Gary's logging on right now.
Hi, Sean.
Hello.
Aloha.
Aloha.
I'm jealous. I'm very jealous.
They are printing more tickets.
The time will come, Mary.
I know. I've been to 47 states. Hawaii and Alaska and Oklahoma are the 3 I've never been to for some reason.
Well, I think Oklahoma's probably obvious. But Hawaii and Alaska are both beautiful.
So I want to go to there. I'm going to go to all of them. Mm-hmm.
All right, we got everybody. We might get started, Brett.
Let me, sorry, Marcus is logging in on a different machine. Let me okay, he's here. All right, let me hit record and we're good.
Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and start this meeting tonight. It's a special meeting with the Lake Stevens City Council. This meeting is going to be via Zoom, and it is Tuesday, March 30th, 2021 at 6 p.m. So with that, call the meeting to order and ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. All right. Councilmember Daughtry.
Here.
Councilmember Peter Shagan. Did I lose him? I think I did. Hold on just a second here.
He's back in the
attending list.
He's in the other room.
Okay. Councilmember Peter Shagan.
Here.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Frederick.
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Jorstad. I believe she's absent. Councilmember Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Tagent.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. So with that, so tonight's meeting, we needed to take care of at least one piece of business, which was the termination of the food bank lease. And that's why I appreciate everyone's flexibility on having this meeting tonight. And then we as well added some additional items to the agenda since we were having a meeting. So with that, can I get an approval of the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, we need to approve Council Member Jorstad's absence.
That is
Move
correct.
to approve Angie Jorstad's absence.
Second.
Second. It's been first and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. All right, council members that are present, there's 6 of us. Does anybody want to remove or change anything on the agenda?
I have a clarification on tonight's special meeting. There's a jet in the background. Is this a public meeting or is this a workshop? Is there public testimony taken or how is this handled?
I suppose to answer the question is one of the items that does say possible action, which is the proposed amendments to marijuana facility buffers, that there could not be action on that tonight. That does need to go to a public hearing. So that is incorrect as far as a possible action on that. But there is no public hearing tonight.
So can the public comment on any of these items tonight?
We do not have citizens' comments set up for tonight now.
Okay, thank you.
Unless of course the council wanted to open up for citizens' comments.
Councilmember Peter Shagan, if I can, in hindsight, this agenda probably should have been split up just a little bit to kind of, categorize the discussion items versus the one potential action item. So I do apologize for that if that was unclear.
Yeah, no problem. I just, it is a special meeting. It doesn't indicate it's a workshop. So I'm kind of under the assumption that it would be open, for discussion. I'm just looking to kind of expectations here for this evening. So.
Well, we're still discussing the agenda. If anybody wants to add public comment to the agenda, we're certainly open to that.
Do we have people in the waiting room?
There's
How many
12
number?
people. There's 12 people in the waiting room.
Yeah, 12 people.
12 people.
I guess I would suggest, since this is advertised as a special meeting and not a workshop, if we have citizens that have a need to comment on something, I guess I would ask the agenda be modified to reflect that.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to modify the agenda to include public comment. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Is there any other discussion about the agenda? Any other changes? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote to approve the agenda. All in favor of this agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Passed unanimously. Mr. Mayor, you have an agenda with the addition of public comment, which I would assume would happen now.
I agree. Thank you very much, President. So with that, let's move into citizens' comments, and we will we'll go ahead and ask from the attendees if there's anyone out there who wishes to have citizens' comments tonight. How we do that is we ask you to raise your hand, and you will be acknowledged and brought into the panelist portion of the Zoom call and be given 3 minutes to address the City Council on any subject you wish to address the Council on. So with that, I have Doug Warren. Doug, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to comment as I know that the main part of this agenda is about the food bank lease at the lease with the city. I actually didn't necessarily have comments prepared. I read the statement that you have as part of the agenda, and I think it was very appropriate. We agreed to the terms, the changes that your city attorney put together that would be part of that change to the lease. And I'm just really excited about the opportunity to work with the VOA with the services that they could provide. You know, when we put this together, it really didn't matter who was providing those services. It was just all about providing those services for the community. And I think that the partnership between the food bank and VOA can really work to provide those services exactly as what we had intended when we drafted this between the food bank and the city.
Excellent, Doug. Thank you for your comments.
Yep, thank you.
Do we have anybody else for citizens' comments tonight? Looking for a hand raised from the attendees. I have Tom Matlock. Matlock. Let's bring Tom in. Tom, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
My comment is the marijuana facility buffers. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you, Tom. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I have several emails from Planner Levitan, and I wrote the 2 liaisons to the Planning Commission today because by following the agenda and the minutes of the Planning Commission, it seemed like the marijuana facility buffers amendment was going to go back to the Planning Commission after more information was gathered, and there were promises of public comment on that, and it appeared on tonight's agenda. So I would just like to go on record, like I did with the 2 liaisons, that it seems the normal process that we've always used has been either accelerated or amended for this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And to address that, one of the things we wanted to do tonight is that we have part of the ordinance of the business license fee is part of that discussion of the proposed buffer. And so what I wanted to do is have that discussion at the same time so that everything was on the table for both of those items on the agenda. So with that, is there anybody else with comments tonight? Any other comments? Okay, seeing no other comments, we'll go ahead and move to discussion items, and we'll move to the first one, which is resolution 2021-09 in support of the 2021 transportation package. Russ.
Good evening, council and audience. Bringing forward to you tonight resolution 2021-19, or excuse me, 09. That would be in support of the state legislator passing a robust, comprehensive transportation package this year. The city has submitted several projects for consideration, including intersection improvements in our downtown area, realignments of some of our trails and extensions of some of our multi-use paths that have been very successful as well. We've worked closely with representatives from the 44th District and 37th District on improvements to the US 2 trestle. In fact, we'll be having conversations with state and federal representatives tomorrow about the funding of that. So to make sure that the state legislator sort of all hear from the cities, we're just asking that there is a resolution passed supporting, again, a robust transportation package coming out of this year, specifically as we look at the impacts of COVID and the jumpstart to new transportation packages to not only the transportation sector, but all of the trade sectors that would be involved in future construction of transportation projects. So again, looking for the council to approve this resolution and sign on to this with our state legislators.
Thank you, Russ. It looks good. I think it's good to partner with our partner with other agencies to make things happen. I mean, because we can't do it by ourselves. So I think this is great.
Any other comments on this resolution?
No, I'm grateful. I know that this is a key issue for Lake Stevens and many other places, but I know particularly here. So I'm totally in support of this.
Okay.
As you all know, I'm basically the transportation wonk on the council. I have some reservations about this particular package that they're trying to put in. Mostly it's about how they're raising the taxes and raising the fees and all that, how they're getting the money to actually pay for this. I'm not exactly happy about it, although I think it is necessary for us to move forward with the transportation package. We're way behind where we should have been years ago. And you know, people are trying to say, well, COVID. Well, no, it's not COVID. This happened way before. You know, I think this actually started happening before the flu was a problem. So we're talking back, you know, during the very beginning of Washington State. And like I said, I have some reservations about some of the things that are in here for raising the fees and, you know, raising the money to do these things. But I recognize that it's necessary to get it done. So that's where I'm coming from. I will sign on to I will vote for the resolution, but I'm not exactly happy. And it's really because they've pushed us into this over the years. It's been years and years, and this is now we're getting to this point. We should have fixed a lot of this stuff when we had the chances before. I just wanted to be on record as saying that. And even though I'm pro transportation, I'm not happy.
I would echo Councilmember Daughtry's comments strongly. Generally speaking, I'm in favor of this, but specifically there are some issues that I do not agree with, but I will support it reluctantly. Thank you.
Any other comments on the resolution? If not, can I get a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 2021-09 in support of the 2021 transportation package.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to support the resolution and a second. Do I have any further discussion on the resolution, on the motion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, resolution passes. So with that, we'll move to the termination of the food bank lease. Russ.
Okay. This is a pretty simple action item for the council. Several years ago, 2019, the city sold land that ended up being donated to the food bank. Subsequent to that, the city entered into a lease agreement with the food bank to ensure that we'd be able to provide some social services in the community. Since that point, there have been some funding issues with the food bank. They're back on track at this point in their fundraising, and they're ready to move forward to the next level. In the interim, they've started a conversation with the Volunteers of America, and mutually, we think it would be beneficial to have the Volunteers of America run the social service programming out of the food bank operation that still carries through with the mission that the city and the food bank had agreed to previously. So there's an action before you tonight. As you can see, the city attorney has reviewed this document and has made some recommendations that we carry some language from the original purchase and sale agreement into this document. So staff is asking the council tonight to approve this action to essentially get out of the lease agreement, terminate the lease agreement, and then the mayor or staff would work with the food bank to put that additional language in there.
All right, sorry about that. I had kids coming home. They make noise. So with that, do we have any questions for Russ, or go ahead, Mary?
And I apologize that I didn't ask you this earlier today, Russ, but so we're talking about the building at Eagle Ridge. That's full of food right now because I've been in that building and I know. So where will all that go? How soon will this happen? Where will that go meanwhile?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. This is a different agreement than the agreement we have for the use of Eagle Ridge Park. This would be their permanent facility that's going to be constructed off of 20th Street.
Okay, good. So then I have to say, I know that the VOA is thrilled. They are thrilled with this opportunity. And I am as well. We need that so badly. So as long as that doesn't throw those cans of food out the window, that's all. I just want to be sure those were going to be taken care of.
Actually, I was up there on Saturday when we were doing a little work at the community center, and you would be surprised how empty that building is right now.
Oh, really?
Okay. Oh, yeah. It's they're having a little bit of difficulty getting enough food to feed everybody. The numbers are way up because of the COVID, and it's pretty astounding how many families and how many people are going through the food bank right now. Be that as it may, I would also like to thank the mayor for coming up with this idea and making it go forward. I had a meeting with him and the president of the VOA where we got this started, and then the mayor continued on with it. I think it was a great job. It was a great idea, and I'm in full support of the VOA and the food bank moving forward with this. I look forward to some great things happening.
Yeah, I just want to echo Kim's comments there. Outstanding work between the VOA and the mayor and the city to make that happen. That's going to be a nice synergistic relationship that we'll have there.
Yeah, and Mary, just to address your thoughts a little bit more, essentially what this does tonight, this termination gets the city out of the way and gets them building. So.
Right. Okay, good. Well, I've talked to Doug Warren. I talked to Ann Anderson too. So this is very important to me that we do this right. And I think we're totally on the right path. So thank you for your hard work.
You bet. All right, any other discussion? We entertain a motion.
I move that we terminate the lease agreement with the Lake Stevens Food Bank and authorize the mayor to, or the designee to finalize the agreement language.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to terminate the lease agreement with the Lake Stevens Food Bank and authorize the mayor or designee to finalize agreement language. And I have a second on that motion. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Great. Thank you very much. Good. We'll get that moving. Get out of the ground. Perfect. So with that, let's move to ordinance 1117, marijuana business license fees. And I want to make sure that we're having this discussion at the same time that we're having the buffer discussion, because they do go together. And I want to make sure that the council understands that as they're deliberating both of these items on the agenda. Now it's going to be Russ.
Okay, thank you again, council. A couple of weeks ago, staff brought this forward to you to have a introductory discussion about potential business license tax for marijuana facilities in the industrial zone. The ordinance has had a couple of revisions since you last saw it. The biggest one was the retail facilities had also been included previously. That has been removed because they're already taxed through a different type of state taxation that does bring in some additional revenues, whereas the processing or the production facilities really don't. So the goal of this ordinance, again, is to bring in some additional funds through this type of business as a special business license fee. Those monies would go into a special fund to help facilitate improvements to the infrastructure in the Hartford area, go towards code enforcement, beautification, and to ensure that we can still have a vital and vibrant industrial area and attract tourism into the area. So that's sort of the goal behind this. I'll let the mayor or Gene add any additional comments, but through this topic, the mayor's done extensive outreach to folks from the marijuana industry. They realize it's time to really start self-taxing themselves to improve the communities that they're part of. Why it's important to Lake Stevens is we look at our industrial areas, and going back to even the council's retreat, we know we have limited commercial and industrial lands. So we want to make sure if there are businesses on those, such as the marijuana facilities that are very land consumptive, that they're still bringing something back positive to the community. If it's not jobs, they're going to be bringing in some additional revenues to help, as again, facilitate some tourism or infrastructure improvements and code enforcement throughout that area. The second part of this we'll discuss in a little while, and Dave will jump in on that. He's been the primary working with the Planning Commission on this citizen-initiated request to review the buffers for processing facilities. So with that, I'll hand it over to the mayor or the city administrator if they wanted to provide any additional comments or context for the council's conversation tonight.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So I think we all know that when we head down to Hartford, that you can be hit with quite a pungent odor of our canopy that we do have down there. It becomes problematic, as I have shown other possible light manufacturers or developers that area, that they recognize that, they notice that. So something that that will be a focus for the new code enforcement officer that we're currently hiring to help clean up that situation. And that's part of this business license fee, is that money will go towards code enforcement and making sure that we're cleaning up the Hartford industrial area from the smells, and as well as the other code issues that we have down there, to make that area more attractive for to bring in other forms of light manufacturing or incubator space, and bring in what we really want to have more of in Lake Stevens is jobs and a good workforce here in Lake Stevens. So that's the nexus of this business license fee. And then just a starter on the next subject, which is the buffer. We do have a processing plant that does want to come into the city, and within Hartford, the Hartford industrial area. And as part of their location, it does place them within 225 feet of a licensed daycare in the Catherine Creek subdivision area. And so that's the need. That is why you have the other portion of the agenda on here, to reduce that buffer. Now, when we think of 225 feet, we think that's really, really close, and it could be considered close, but this is a processing plant. This is not a retail. There's not people coming and going and purchasing things from this processing plant. It's purely processing. And the other thing to think about on this is the industrial areas are the only places that cannabis can be found, whether it's a retail spot or processing or canopy within the city of Lake Stevens. That's in the code. And I would continue to support that, maintaining cannabis only in the industrial area, whether it's either of those three areas. So when we look at the distance of 225 feet, we think that that's close, but the reality of it is for someone to get from that licensed daycare to this plant or to this processing plant, they'd have to walk all the way around Catherine Creek, 36th Street, and into Hartford area, which is the same distance measuring method for liquor. So, we have several liquor establishments that are very close, straight line distance to our schools and what have you in Lake Stevens, but they're the metrics for measuring distance is different than cannabis. Cannabis is a straight line distance. So I want council to understand that that's everything on the table, so that as you make a decision on these things, I wanted you to have everything that's out there so you can make a sound decision and you weren't surprised down the road with other factors.
So perhaps before we move into the discussion, then just to have it be comprehensive, maybe I can turn it over to Dave and you can share a little bit about the next agenda, the related agenda item, and the conversations you've had with the Planning Commission and where the status of that is.
Yeah, I can do that, Russ. Thank you, Mayor, council members. So just to provide a little bit of history on this discussion, we did receive a citizen-initiated code amendment back in late 2020. And to date, I believe we've had three. I think we did have a short fourth discussion on this proposal to reduce what is the standard 1,000-foot buffer. That's what's the standard buffer under the current RCW that deals with marijuana facilities, including processing, production, and retail. By default, it's 1,000 feet, and that's measured closest portion of a property to the closest portion of a property to the nearest protected use, those uses being things like schools, parks, daycare centers, playgrounds, basically anywhere that minors might be present. So what the applicant is proposing is to reduce that standard 1,000-foot buffer to a minimum of 225 feet, basically for the closest distance, but that the distance as measured across the most direct route via public rights-of-way stays at least 1,000 feet. So kind of similarly to what Mayor Gailey was speaking to, where the minimum distance of 500 feet between a establishment with a liquor license and some of these protected uses is 500 feet. This would still require that the minimum distance as measured across those public rights-of-way maintain that 1,000-foot minimum, even if the closest point as the crow flies is 225 feet. So we did bring this before the Planning Commission a couple times in January as well as in February. They did express kind of some general concerns about existing odor issues within the Hartford industrial area. We received some additional documentation from the applicant's representative, who I can see are listening in tonight. And as far as odor generation and the differences between processing facilities and production or grow facilities, with grow operations, especially with the harvesting of plants being responsible for the majority of odor issues within industrial areas where these types of uses are permitted. And so we had told the Planning Commission back during our last work session that we were going to be checking in with the City Council before we brought it back for a potential public hearing. So speaking to some of the public comments that Mr. Matlack provided. You know, any action on the code amendment would require a public hearing, so we're not circumventing any of the procedural requirements. We wanted to give the city council an opportunity to weigh in on the proposed amendment before we bring it back to the planning commission.
And I'll just add one more distinction. So as Dave suggested, the second item, the buffer item, that is on the planning commission's agenda. So they would be the body to hold a public hearing or make a recommendation to the city council. There have been some instances where the planning commission or the city council has asked to take the direct action. So far, that hasn't been requested. The other item, the tax ordinance, that is purely council's discretion to take action on that as it relates to financing, and it's not within the zoning code. So the two discussion topics have a different path forward and would be brought back to council on those different paths.
Just an issue of Russ, of nomenclature. It's not a tax ordinance, it's a licensing fee ordinance. There's a significant difference between the two, and so that's we'll discuss it as a licensing fee ordinance. Thank you.
And so, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions as far as the Planning Commission's previous review, or if you have any questions about the staff report related to the buffers.
So on the floor right now, I think we have both of the agenda items on the floor, so we could discuss, intermingle the discussion. I think that's a good idea, and/or you can take action on the licensed business fee if you wish, or whatever the council's desires are for tonight.
Anybody going to jump in here?
I was going to say, I found the maps confusing. I tried to study the maps. Now this circle here, this circle over here, what does this mean? It really boggled my mind, but that's my problem. But I also want to say, having marijuana, not production, am I correct? It's not producing, it's processing. Is that correct? Is that what you told me? So it's processing it, but closer to children. That's, school teacher in me, I can have a problem with that. I'm still listening. I'm ready to go with this plan, but I just need to be really confident that we're not putting any kids in any kind of, more danger than already might be the case. But
yeah, and so I apologize.
Correct. The second ordinance does relate to processing facilities only, not to grow operations.
Right.
And again, the operation or the facility in question, it's a home occupation that's providing this childcare. Not that that's any less important, but to put it in context, it's in the middle of a neighborhood. It's not in a retail or a commercial zone.
Thank you.
So along those lines, if I can jump in here regarding the fee, it does talk about production and processing, but are we only utilizing the fee on the processing? You talked about the city finds the business engaged in the production and processing or a distinct class of business that can be reasonably and justly differentiated from other production, processing, and wholesale businesses. So I'm assuming the fee applies to production also?
Yes.
Okay.
That's basically everything but retail, right?
Yes.
Currently, right now, we have about 55,000 square feet of production and processing, right?
That's correct.
Okay. With a cap of 70,000.
For grows. There could be additional processing beyond that number if they were separate facilities.
How much more?
There is no cap on processing, just on the grow production side.
So that's interesting. Okay.
That had been one of the changes council actually made when this came back before you several years ago. It had revised. It used to be a combined cap, and the revised ordinance was recommended to reduce the overall cap, but only have it tied to production.
I believe we went from 150,000 to 70,000 on that, and then took it out of the production area. I mean, not processing.
Okay. So potentially we could be dealing with, I mean, if we allow this particular processor to come in and it's successful for them, hopefully. Other folks could come in, we could potentially be dealing with 200,000 square feet.
It's possible.
Okay. All right. So I guess the door is open in regards to that. I want to clarify that so that we're all under the same understanding. So, okay. And I appreciate you clarifying this license fee doesn't apply to retail. That was one of my questions. I guess a question comes to mind is how were the fees calculated? Or I mean, what's the basis or genesis of these fees?
I'll let the mayor address that question.
The fees were based upon a suggestion from the industry.
Well, I could be a smart aleck and say, shoot, being a builder, I'd like to dictate the building permit fees.
Sure.
So I guess that gets over to 4.80.080, which talks about the fund and usage. And I guess I would say when we're talking about code enforcement, public safety, neighborhood improvements, recreational tourism, and the economic diversification of Hartford Machias, does $6 per gross square foot cover all that?
So I think proportionally speaking, when you look at, if we at the bottom range of 6, and we went to 70,000 with this processing plant, you'd have a revenue increase of 420,000. You would have the code enforcement, full-time code enforcement officer is going to cost us 95,000-ish, leaving 320,000 towards other public safety measures and putting a jump start into building out the Hartford infrastructure. I think that for the amount of space taken up by the cannabis industry in there, there's no hard science numbers to it, Gary, but that's I think it's a start.
Okay, well, I guess I mean that's when you highlight neighborhood improvements, that's kind of like, wow, what are we talking about? We're going to put park benches along Hartford Drive, or we're going to put odor control, or I mean, what is that catch-all? And I don't want to have a situation where the industry recommended a fee and it doesn't cover what we need. So again, trying to get comfortable with the basis for where that fee was arrived at.
Right.
You talked about 70,000 square feet, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the processing portion of this is only about 20,000 square feet, right?
Right, but we're at 50, 55-ish right now. And the new processor is another 15,000. So that's where I'm getting my 70.
Oh, okay. 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 Well, I'm still kind of trying to get my arms around this neighborhood improvements term. One question I have for Russ, and this isn't specifically regarding the fees, but on the amendments to the buffer on page 22 of the 49 that you provided to us, it talks about down on number 4, no state licensed marijuana facility shall be located within 1,000 feet perimeter, da, 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 da. And it talks about recreation center or facility in public park. What is the definition of the Centennial Trail?
The trails like that were excluded from the I-502 regulations. So I can't tell you the exact definition that Snohomish County has for the trail, but I can tell you that facilities like that were excluded from this legislation.
So even though on page 15 you talk about the Centennial Trail is a regional recreation facility, it doesn't apply to the Centennial Trail?
The separation does not, but as a recreational amenity that we know anybody who's used the trail, you definitely encounter the odor from the growing operations.
So what, and I'm belaboring my point here, council, please bear with me, but what kind of enforcement action would you, if this continues, this effervescence continues, what type of enforcement action would you see the city taking? What path to correct?
So I think there's a few routes we can go. One thing is we don't have the immediacy at this point to respond. When we have a dedicated person, if an odor complaint comes in a timely manner, real time, we can get out and do the tracking to the source of that. Paths from there, a couple of things. Obviously, they're all operating under business licenses that have them guaranteed to perform certain ways, have certain infrastructure. So we can look at their business licenses. We can work with Puget Sound Clean Air and file our reports with them if there is a violation outside of what they're allowed to do. So I think there's a few paths that we can use to leverage, but again, it has more to do with the immediacy of being able to get out there and trace the smells to its origin rather than just because if it happens after the fact, when it goes back to Puget Sound Clean Air, they won't take action.
So does this authority, would it be able to be implemented under the present code, or do we need to continue to work on our revised code enforcement that we're talking about here in the next couple of months?
No, we can take action today.
Okay.
We have our general nuisance authority under our code and under state statute to enforce public nuisances. And of course, that's one of the things our new code enforcement officer will be able to help us with. But even if the Puget Sound Air Quality Control Agency doesn't take action for violating their specific requirements, we still have authority to take nuisance action under our code.
So potentially, if they do not comply with any orders from either the city or the Puget Sound Air Control, we could
air quality, yeah, mm-hmm.
Air quality, we could shut that facility down.
You could go after their business license.
We could, yes, or fine them or take other action. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Remember, just to clarify, we do have some existing performance standards related to odor Under our supplementary use regulations in 1444.097, it's really about our ability to monitor and then enforce and to really be able to track and pinpoint where the odor is being generated from, especially when a lot of these uses are kind of co-located in one area.
Could, if I may, could this this code enforcement also be applied to the septic service business that is located north of this proposed facility, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have a question then on the on this proposed ordinance for the buffers. What is it in our code that relegates these facilities only to the Hartford area?
So within our permissible use table, marijuana facilities are only permitted within the light industrial and general industrial areas. And really, besides one parcel up near Highway 92, the rest of our industrial zones are within that area in the Hartford area.
So if we were to change the buffer, it also includes that particular parcel out there on Highway 92.
Yeah, I mean, if a marijuana business were to locate there, but I think that's one single property outside of the Hartford area.
And that one has a different zoning. That one has a contract zoning and it's fully built out. So I would have to look, but I don't even know under that contract zoning if marijuana would be possible at that location.
Well, I'm just a little bit hesitant about people coming in and trying to get it to go elsewhere. I mean, we had a couple 3 years ago, we had one try to get retail up onto Frontier Village. We had to take action on that. So I don't want to have to go through that again. So if we can have it where the Hartford area is exactly where it is, and I mean, when you look at this and the map and the difficulty it would be for a child to get to this area, it's common sense that it's too far away. I mean, the other thing is the house next door could have marijuana in it, and smoking on the porch, for instance, or the people inside this house could be using marijuana. It really has nothing to do with the processing plant. I don't think there's a problem with processing being 225 feet as the crow flies, especially if it still states that it's got to be 1,000 feet in order to get to it by normal public access. I don't have a problem with that. I just don't want this to blow up and okay, now we're opening up the city in other areas where we're going to do this. So I'm also not really looking to have a whole lot of processing plants come down to our one area. I think there's other uses we need in Hartford area, and I don't want it to be open season for, hey, everybody, marijuana processing is in Lake Stevens and we're the heart of it. I hope that doesn't happen.
Well, Councilmember Daughtry, one way you could not allow that to happen is put some sort of cap square footage on that particular item rather than just hope it doesn't happen.
Well, right now I'm only at a function where I can hope. We could put a cap on it. There's no doubt about that.
Okay. Hopefully you haven't forgot about that option, I guess.
I will mention that before we had a cap on the space, when we had the other processors in there. Is that correct, Russ?
Can you state that again, please?
We had a cap in there before for only so much industrial space when we first let producers or whatever be in there. Mm-hmm. So that would be one way to control it.
Yeah, there was a higher cap before that was a combined processing and grow cap. And as we talked about earlier, that was taken out of the code and just the cap was only applied to growers. So if, that's something council wanted to look at, we could definitely come up with a number.
I would offer that maybe we look along those lines, especially in light of we're kind of going down uncharted path. We don't know what truly the ramifications are going to be. And so I would suggest that maybe we explore that option.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this? It's good discussion. Good thoughts floating around here.
So for the point of moving the discussion forward, haven't heard a lot about the business license fee, more about the buffer. As we mentioned, we do want to report back to Planning Commission. And I guess what I've heard, I haven't heard a yes or a no. I've heard let's look at a couple of other topics, and that at least one council member has stated they don't have an issue, common sense wise with the buffer. But it looks like we still have a little bit more conversation. And as we go to the business license fee, I really haven't heard from council directly if they have a strong support moving forward with that. Just questions about where are the funds going to be used. So that's sort of what's ahead of us tonight. One, how do we report back to the Planning Commission? Two, does council want to act on the business license fee tonight, or would you like to come back at an additional action meeting?
Russ, I think that stating that we have a fee that we want to put in place on a particular business or a particular group of businesses or whatever, I think it's just like in the TBD, we want to make sure that we understand where the money is going to go. I mean, we see it too often in other jurisdictions above us, state especially, that they want to tax us and do different things. And okay, we're going to do this, but we can't tell you where we're going to put the money yet. And I just do not agree with that. If we're going to have a processing fee, we need to get it down to, exactly what it's going to be used for. I think that Gary stating in there that there's kind of a nebulous thing in there for, improving a neighborhood. Well, what does that mean? What is the definition? So, if we had some operational definitions to those items that are in that line that Gary brought up, I don't have it in front of me right now. I think it would be better. I'd certainly like to know what we're going to use the money for. Just like the TBD, I believe this should be a dedicated fund.
I would suggest that maybe, and along those lines, Councilmember Daughtry, I would suggest that we maybe rank our priority of those items. And obviously code enforcement is the utmost importance. Public safety is probably second, and then the other things kind of fall in afterwards. I would hate to get into a situation where we do some capital improvements to the Hartford area and we come to find out that we need to expend all the funds in a particular year for some sort of capital improvement, and code enforcement goes by the wayside. So I would agree with you. I think we need to get our kind of focus in on the neighborhood improvements and maybe actually scratch that. And maybe talk about again, maybe just, I guess I would suggest eliminating neighborhood improvements and recreational tourism, and just focus on code enforcement, public safety, and economic diversification of the Hartford Machias industrial area.
Well, I think that you're probably right on that, Gary. I appreciate your candor on that. Also, I believe that, that we're getting $400,000 a year or whatever. It's really not enough to put into infrastructure anyway. I believe that that's going to get taken up by the other three priorities. Of course, if you look at the chart, it does go up over the years, and fees always go up, taxes always go up. So
yeah, it could be used for bonding purposes, though.
Yeah, it could, but if we want to leave infrastructure in there, then that'd be great. But I think neighborhood improvement is a little bit of a different operational definition than infrastructure improvements.
Right.
So maybe they want to term it in infrastructure improvements instead of neighborhood improvements.
So to jump in on that conversation, I think when we were thinking neighborhood improvements, recreational tourism, we were thinking of that section of the Centennial Trail that does run through the industrial area and improving that area so it is a better environment for folks to go through while they're in the industrial area. Mary.
Thank you, Gary and Kim, for giving me a little history of what happened before I got here. But I also was pondering the Centennial Trail, a place where Sean Frederick knows I've been. I ran into him one time on the trail. So it's very important to me. And if you want to bring people into Lake Stevens and have them walk down that trail, do you want them to see the industrial area? I call that the industrial section of the trail. There is opportunity. Now, whether this is the way to fund it, I don't know. But it is certainly a place that we have potential for. I talked to the Park and Arts Foundation about it. And, I think there's a lot of interest in that. We have a lot of people who have skill sets to do something about that so that not just Arlington, where you walk down the trail in Arlington, you've got art, you've got murals, you've got all kinds of wonderful statues. And when you come down through Lake Stevens, what do you see? Well, what do you smell? And then what do you see? It's very industrial. So I think it could be doing, mark us as people who are recognizing the beauty of our city and celebrating it right there on Centennial Trail. So that's all I have to say.
Councilmember Frederick.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of circle back to something Gary started off with in his initial comments, Councilmember Peter Shagan. And I think that really it almost gets to the crux of the challenge here, regardless of what goes into the staff report in terms of the goals of the fees. But we have to make sure that the fees are appropriate and actually match up with the stated goals of using those fees to make improvements, be they public safety, be they neighborhood improvement, whatever those are. I think it's challenging in any time that the primary, what I heard, and perhaps I'm wrong, what I heard is the primary input for determining the fees came from the industry. And I think if you offer industry, in almost any industry, the opportunity to give those fees, while those fees may be generous, those fees will likely be advantageous for their operation as well. And while we certainly want every business to be successful in Lake Stevens, we want to make sure that the appropriate fees are collected for us to be able to take appropriate steps for the benefit of our citizens. So if there's a way, if we know where there are other processing facilities or other production facilities and what applicable fees exist there, I don't know if any specific comparables have been put together with a great degree of intent on looking at, do they meet our needs? If that could be accomplished, I think that would be really helpful as far as the fee portion itself. And I'll actually reserve in any comment for or against both items at this point.
Okay, so Russ, do we think, so I'm hearing we need to ratchet down, be a little more specific on the license fees, where it's going to go. And then maybe do some due diligence on the actual fee structure.
That's what I heard.
Okay. Council, are we on the right missile tracking? Okay. All right. As these were discussion items and we don't have any motions on the floor, I don't think we need a table anything. I think we can just move to the next, unless there's further discussion on these two items.
Mr. Mayor, I would maybe add to that little laundry list there, maybe a brief discussion of maybe addressing Councilmembers Daughtry's concern that we unintended consequences, that maybe we cap this initially for a year or two and see how this process works to make sure that we're getting comfortable with this situation.
Yeah.
Hopefully you would support that, Councilmember Daughtry.
I would support that, including the new processor in that, whatever that square footage then becomes at that point, capping it at that point, and then watching for a year or two and see what happens. Because unintended consequences, everything we do has unintended consequences. I mean, we've had some in the past where, okay, the very next week we had to come back and undo something, and that was just, I don't like doing that. It just makes me cringe every time we do something. So I like that. Let's go. I think we ought to cap it and just let's see how it works.
Yeah. Okay. Good discussion. I like it. Okay, with that, let's move to the next item, which is the 2020 year-end financial report with Barb, the much anticipated, much awaited.
I hope it lives up to its hype. Kelly, can I share my screen?
Yes, let me give you that permission right now. Okay, you should be good to go.
Okay. Everybody see my Lake Stevens 2020 year end presentation? Okay, great. As Major Gailey mentioned, this is it's a little later than I usually get it out to you guys. We had some reprioritization, but I wanted to make sure to get it out to you before the end of March, and so today is my last opportunity for that. So I've pulled everything together for you, and we'll get through this. First of all, we're going to take a look at all of the funds. This is citywide funds. The table includes the 2020 budgeted amount, the estimated amount, which we use for the 2021 budget process, actual year end, and then the percent variances. In that actual year end 2020 column, you can see our total ending cash investment balance, which is the top number, is approximately 30.5 million. This is about 8.5 million more than we budgeted. Approximately 6.8 of that variance is due to expenditure budgets that we rolled forward into 2021. With regard to the year-end estimates that we use for our 2021 process, as usual, those are much closer to our actual than our budgeted amounts are. With regard to the estimated amounts, we're about 7% under our expenditure expectations and 2% above revenue expectations compared to actuals. So not too far off. Looking at our citywide revenues, this can be a little overwhelming when you are trying to take it all in. The columns include the revenue source, the fund, the uses, which is either unrestricted or restricted or limited. And then I have the 2020 budget, 2020 actual, and some percentage variances. I've also tried to color code by fund, or in a couple cases, like the impact fees, and then sewer surface, they're by fund type. So I've highlighted a few of these items that we anticipated to come in under budget due to the pandemic. The first item is sales tax, and that actually increased by 12% over 2019 and was actually about 20% over budget. So this is generally because we don't have a large sales tax base of brick and mortar stores or indoor entertainment facilities that other communities have. So things like destination-based sales tax, which include deliveries and internet sales, benefit us more than they benefit others. I'll show a breakdown of our tax classification in a later slide. The next thing to look at is building permits. This are also way ahead of budget and increased by 9.4% over 2019. I'm going to skip down to real estate excise taxes. Those were 37% over budget and 16.5% increase over 2019. And then park and traffic impact fees, those were also significantly over budget and 10 to 14% increase over prior year. As we know, during the pandemic, how and where people work change their buying habits regarding, things like fuel and homes and other things. And so those REIT and building permits, traffic impact fees, park impact fees really goes along with, the developing and the building and what people are looking for. Going back to the state shared motor vehicle fuel tax within the street fund, that is our one large decrease we saw due to the pandemic. This is a state shared revenue that's proportionately shared by population, and this is applied to the number of gallons purchased. And so obviously people weren't driving to work, weren't driving on vacations, so that number decreased by 10% over 2019 and came in about 11% under budget. So this is one of those things that we can actually refer to when we get the funding from the Rescue Act. They're allowing for the lost revenues from due to COVID, and that would be this is one of the things that we will actually reference with those dollars. So looking again at our major revenue sources, starting kind of at the bottom, property tax. Property taxes are our largest revenue source. It makes up 8% of our citywide revenues, much higher proportionate share of our general fund itself. Sales taxes are second largest revenue. And then, as I mentioned, your building permits, REIT, park mitigation, impact fees, again, significantly over budget. Land use at the top, that one was actually less than we had budgeted, but it was still an increase over the prior year. So there was still plats being taken out, but just not as many as we had anticipated based on our what we had known and suspected to be developments coming in. So this is looking at that sales tax trend by classification. This is kind of there's a lot to look at here too. I've shown this a few times, but as I mentioned, overall sales tax increased by 12.3% over 2019, and that's shown in the second to the last column, change percent 2019 to 20 down at the bottom. I've highlighted our major types of sales tax receipts, starting with construction sales tax. As you can see, that did decrease by about 1.8% from 2019 to 2020, but it still makes up a very large portion of our sales tax. So 26.9% of our total sales tax is made up with construction sales tax. The next two highlighted, we generally consider those together. That makes up 43% of our total sales tax, increased by 27% in 2020 over 2019. So that one's a big one. That was definitely destination-based sales tax, deliveries, internet sales, that type of thing. Food services decreased just slightly. Obviously, we had anticipated it would increase year over year, but it decreased slightly, and it makes up about 9% of the total sales tax. Looking at our citywide budget versus actual revenues and expenditures. Total revenues, about 48.9 million. It makes up, we're at 88% of the budget. And that's 3% more than in 2019. So that's for our revenues. Our expenditures, 53.5 million. That's the green portion of the graph in the middle. I tried to coordinate my 2020 actuals with the color code on the side. So 78% of the expenditure budget, and that's 33% more than in 2019. So the fact that we were that far under budget and it's an increase over 2019, the majority of that is due to our multi-year capital project budgets, which you'll see in the next slide. So as you can see, the second from the bottom, that one's our capital projects. That makes up 37% of all of our expenditures. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we rolled forward $6.8 million, and 6.6 of that was capital projects. So that one's a big one. Staffing at the top, that's made up by salaries, benefits, overtime. That makes up 23% of our total citywide expenditures. And then the other one I wanted to mention is the other uses down at the bottom, just because it's there's a large variance. That is interfund transfers, which actually equal out to each other, transfers in and out. But it also includes interfund loans, which we have some outstanding interfund loans, which I will show you here. Interfund loans, we're required to report those out to council, keep you up to date on what we're doing with the money within. This is when we're actually loaning money from one fund to another fund. There's a purpose and has to be a time frame involved. So we made 2 interfund loans in 2020. The 305 downtown development, that one was actually one that had started in 2019, I believe. It might have actually started in 2018. And this, we took out additional loans of $636,149, and then we repaid that as well as our previous balance with the Commerce Grant when that came in. So that was for downtown. And then right at the end of the year, we actually did a loan for the 20th Street Southeast. This is the one where we have the TIB grant that's coming in extremely slowly because of the motor vehicle fuel tax. So this is the one where we have a $4 million grant, I believe it is, and it's coming in chunks of $150,000 or so per month. So we do anticipate getting this one paid off by year end. So that's what we have. That one came out of the permit funds. So we're borrowing from the general fund permit fund for that one. Looking at our general fund expenditures, I have the departments down the side on the graph. General fund, or the general government, makes up approximately 15%. The general fund, parks 7%, law enforcement 54%, planning and building lumped together about 11%. Administration, that includes the administration, city clerk, human resources, and finance. And then we have the elected, which includes the mayor and the council. So our general fund expenditures, approximately 14 million, 9% under budget. Driving factors for that were limiting our expenditures during COVID, and that included staffing levels. So we kind of put a hold on things and kept an eye out while we were moving along. Street fund expenditures, these are looking at expenditure types: staffing, supplies, services, capital projects, and other uses. Other uses are interfund transfers. Year-end expenditure is 2.5 million, 16% under budget. The capital project is the public works shop, the portion that's coming out of the street fund. We have a portion coming out of street, stormwater, and general fund. And so that got rolled into 2021. And then staffing, that was due to vacant positions. Again, we were holding positions, and there was some reorganization in the public works department. Stormwater fund, same thing in the staffing, under budget. There was vacancies. The capital projects included the decamp facility, the public workshop, some drainage in there as well. Year end 5.6 million, 25% under budget. And this is the last slide. This is all of our funds. This is the budget versus actual on budget, on revenues as well as expenditures, and then our ending cash. I have highlighted a few with revenues that are significantly below budget. The first one is in the permit fund, and that one is actually we had budgeted the repayment of that loan that I just mentioned, the $3 million. We budgeted the revenue to get it repaid as well as the expenditure going out. And so that actually got rolled forward into 2021. If you remove out that repayment of the loan, the revenues actually increased from 2019 to 2020. And then the other ones are capital project funds. That's caused mostly by lagging grant reimbursements. That's whether the project's ongoing or, as I mentioned, the TIB grant, which is coming in extremely slowly. And also there is decreases in investment interest. So those last two, the Sidewalk Capital Project and the 20th Street, the majority of those revenues we anticipated were interest, and their interest is down in all funds. So we experienced that decrease in all funds. That is all I have for you for 2020. It was actually not as we anticipated, a downturn, a bad downturn, and didn't really experience that in our city. So some things that did decrease, we had, like I said, in the sales tax, some areas did decrease, like construction and accommodations, which is your restaurants and that type of thing. But the internet sales and deliveries really, they picked up significantly. I see Kim has a question.
Back on the interfund loans, I know you don't have any coming from a dedicated fund, but when you do have it coming from a dedicated fund, then interest has to be accrued. What's the interest rate that is necessary to do? Is there a rate that we have to use, or is that set by us, or how does that work?
It's the average of our interest that we would get paid had that money been in the fund itself. And we invest in LGIP, local government investment pool. And so we would use that percentage rate, which is extremely low. So the only time we don't have to pay interest is if it's a loan within a month. So there's no, because we actually do all of our interest earnings at the end of the month. And so if it's within the month, or if it's general fund. General fund is unrestricted money. And so that we don't need to do interest payments for that. If it was out of any other fund, we would have to do interest payments as well.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
No, Barb, I would just say thank you for the presentation. I know that I know very, very much how difficult 2020 was as a year from an accounting and finance standpoint. So even to be able to put the presentation together, though you would like to have had it done earlier, even having it done at this relatively early state in the year is really a testament to all of you and your staff's hard work. And, you know, overall for the city to perform as well as it did is really a testament to everyone on board the staff and all of their due diligence to making sure that they're making prudent decisions day by day. It's the little things that really allow the city to perform as well as it did. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Sean, and I will pass that on to my staff as well.
What Sean said, absolutely. So proud of our staff every day. You're all amazing. Thank you.
All right, Barb, great job. Appreciate it. We've run out of agenda items for tonight. Sadly, maybe not. So with that, we've got some great discussion tonight on all these topics, and I appreciate the support on the food bank lease. That will be a great project to get moved forward. And so I would entertain a motion to adjourn at this point.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed can stay if they wish. So have a great night. Go out and do good things. Help your neighbor and Yeah, it's two great things.
All right.
Reminder, no workshop next week. We'll see you on April 13th.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Have a good night.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Bye.